Chairperson, you are on mute.
Thank you, Ms. Niekerk. Honourable members, welcome to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. Today is Tuesday, the 22nd of February 2022, and a warm welcome to all the members who have already joined. I trust that some will still join us through the course of this meeting. And a warm welcome also to our support staff. Thank you very much for making it possible for us to meet in this way. A special word of welcome to our new member, Honourable August. I saw him and now he's disappeared, but Honourable August, you're most welcome. And I trust that you are familiar, although I think in the National Assembly you mostly work with Zoom. Please, just in terms of our protocol, please keep your microphone on mute if you're not participating. And please note that the raise hand function is the preferred way if you would like to draw the chairperson's attention to anything. A warm welcome also to Honourable Derek America, who I believe is standing in for Honourable Deirdre Baartman. I have received a number of apologies. The first apology is from MEC Dr. Ivan Meyer, and then also from the head of department, Dr. Sebu Petsa. And then let me just ask our procedural officer if any other apologies have also been submitted since to her.
No further apologies, Chairperson.
Good, thank you. And just for the record, my name is Andrikus van der Westhuizen. I'm the chairperson of this standing committee. And if I could just ask the other members who are online, starting with Honourable America, to just also confirm their attendance.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Derek America. I'm standing in as indicated by the chairperson for Honourable Baartman. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. The next member.
I am here, Mr. Chairman, and it's nice to sit under your chairmanship once more.
Good. And, welcome, Honourable Marais. We're looking forward to also your participation in this meeting. And then, is it lastly, Honourable August?
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm looking forward for my first time to participate in this portfolio. And I've looked at the agenda and also read through part of the presentations and quite excited to participate. Thank you, Chairperson.
Good, thank you. And I hope you will feel welcome as soon. I see Honourable Maran's microphone is unmuted.
Yes, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Honourable Maran, member of this committee. Thanks.
Good, thank you very much. Are those all the members that are online? Thank you. Then we also have with us from the Department of Agriculture, Dr. Dirk Trotsky and Mr. Daryl Jacobs. If you would mind just introducing yourself as well as your positions.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. Daryl Jacobs, the Deputy Director General of Agricultural Development and Support Services. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Dirk Trotsky, Director of Business Planning and Strategy in the Western Cape Department of Agriculture. But as such, I'm also responsible for the coordination of international interaction. Thanks.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Trotsky, and also Mr. Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs, your microphone did pick up some shuffling noises, if I can describe it like that. I do hope that it's perhaps just a piece of paper or so. Then I also want to recognize the attendance of Mr. Luyiso Njamela, representing the South African Local Government Association, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct, Mr. Njamela?
Correct, Chairperson.
Good, thank you, and you're also most welcome And I hope you will also find the contents of this meeting interesting and that you will also feel like us, that you are learning something from this meeting, that you can take something away. And then to our support staff, I have already recognized Ms. Shireen Niekerk, who always keep me on the straight and narrow and tell me when I'm muted, when I try to speak, etc. Then we also have Ms. Mshumpela, who is also assisting her, and then obviously also our IT staff, without whom's support we would not be possible to meet in this way. So Mr. Clarence Iso, thank you very much also for your support in this regard. Thank you, honourable members. I trust that this now deals with the attendance. I recently noted via the media that the Department of Agriculture, Western Cape, was at the point busy with the signing of a memorandum of understanding with the state of California, and it was said in the article that both the Western Cape and the state of California share, in terms of agriculture, a lot of similarities, for example, climate-wise, and also in terms of some of the produce that are produced, etc. And since this is an intergovernmental agreement, I thought it well for us just to learn a little bit more about this memorandum, the contents of the memorandum, the purpose of it, etc. And the department kindly agreed to come and brief us on this agreement. And perhaps, Dr. Trotsky, I believe you are going to do the presentation. Perhaps you can just also ensure that we know, has it been signed already, etc. So therefore, can I ask that you flight your presentation on the screen for all the members to see? And with that, I want to hand over to you. I don't know if before you start with your presentation, whether Mr. Jacobs would like to also just add a few words. Mr. Jacobs?
Chair, thank you very much. I actually wanted to ask, and I hope the sound is a little bit better, that there's no more shuffling. But I wanted to ask if it was possible for me to do the update on the shift of the college first, which would be a lot more briefer than Dr. Trotsky's presentation. I'm sort of navigating between a meeting here and a national meeting with the National Department of Agriculture, our national colleagues. So can I just check if that would be possible, Chair?
I'm happy for the order to be changed, and I trust that the members would be of the same opinion. So please, and thank you there for prioritizing us. Please go ahead. Just in terms of your input, as some of the members might know, that there've been talk for quite a while that since tertiary education is specified in the Constitution of South Africa as a national competency, that the future of the agricultural colleges when it comes to tertiary education might be in a state of flux, or that it might change. And last year there was even talk that from this academic year that such changes would already be implemented. And I also thought it necessary for the committee just to know where we are standing in terms of those plans. So over to you, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honourable members. I think it is important to note that the intention by the National Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, in conjunction with the Department of Higher Education and Training, was for the colleges to shift with effect from 1st of April 2022. That plan was already quite far advanced. The only pushback that there was in fact from the Western Cape. and from the Elsenburg Agricultural Training Institute, and I led a lot of the negotiations and discussions. We pushed it all the way up to National Treasury, supported by a Provincial Treasury, where we were arguing that a National had firstly not thought everything through properly, that the plans for the shift was lagging way behind schedule, that a lot of the statutory processes and regulatory processes had not been concluded yet, especially that of consultation between our MEC together with the National Ministers of Higher Education and Training and the National Minister of Agriculture. And we were finally able to convince National Treasury that the position of the province is a sound position, that National had not followed all the due processes. And while I know the invitation to this meeting indicates that I need to give an update on whether any formal correspondence has been received by the department or from the Department of Higher Education and Training, I can say, Chairperson and members, there was no formal notification. However, we have been informed via at least 2 meetings, one at with all of the heads of departments at otherwise known as Mintec, and via the National Treasury, that the shift has been deferred to 1st of April 2023, and that is also subject to all regulatory processes being concluded. So as things stand at this point, Chairperson and members, Elsenburg will remain an integral part of the Department of Agriculture, and we will continue to position ourselves and prepare ourselves. And as we've outlined, there's at least 5 other options that can be explored. We are insisting that in the consultation at the executive level, that all 5 of those options be fully explored before there can be any talk of any shift into the national landscape. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Honourable members, are there any questions from your side?
If I may, Chairperson.
Yes, you're welcome, Honourable Murray. I trust that you also are able to raise your hand, but since you are on the floor, please proceed.
Sorry, sir. If there's somebody who raised his hand, I'm prepared to step back and answer.
No. Please proceed.
Okay. This is a dangerous sign that they now want the agricultural colleges actually to be given to National, and it should be taken very serious. It's exactly the opposite of what the Premier said. He wanted more powers, and already environmental affairs, I'm glad this, if the Premier changed his mind about doing away with the environmental commissioner, but now they're starting again with the colleges. Now, I know primary school is a provincial competency and the academics tertiary education is national. We are busy trying to train emerging farmers. We must make a bill and a law to say emerging farmers go to primary agricultural colleges. And it's time we're looking at that then. Then we will train our emerging farmers. The province will do it. We just put it at a level that is in line with our competency, that we do primary and they do tertiary. So we can start colleges, and we must think long term where the training of emerging farmers is done at that level, so that they don't control the whole thing from training emerging farmers right up to tertiary level. It's just an idea I wanted to plant in the heads. I've got other things to talk about, but this is the only thing I now want to react on. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Murray. Mr. Jacobs, as somebody who previously worked at TVET, a college, then called the Technical College. I can just say that, there are a number of items to be considered, and I believe you are fully aware of them. Not only the migration of the staff, not only the formalization on a national level of the curricula of the various colleges, but what I can say is that, the colleges started merging in the year 2000, and they were transferred to higher education probably around about 2008. And now 14 years later, they are on the brink of implementing the staff establishment model. So, one of the very important aspects for me is for National to develop a staff establishment model for agricultural colleges to ensure that, the work of the college would be able to continue. And the second one is, and I think that is what Honorable Marais referred to, is the whole issue that, education, unfortunately, it's not that easy to distinguish between primary, secondary, and tertiary education. And as Honorable Marais has indicated, it's only the tertiary education for which a national has got the sole mandate. And I've always wondered, if a university teaches somebody beginner French or beginner German, which is obviously at the lower level than even your matric French or matric German, how can you say that that is now tertiary education? So I believe there are a number of issues, and I'm really relieved to know that this will not pushed through now. In agricultural terms, we can say die wing word ryp gedruk, and I'm really grateful for the postponement in order for you to ensure that everything will be in order and that all the questions that people may have from the college's side would be responded to adequately before any transfers can take place. I think it would just be in the best interest and also responsible towards the students and their parents to ensure that everything is in place. Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. I can just also recognize the presence of Honorable Maseku. Thank you for joining us, Honorable. And with that, Mr. Jacobs, perhaps a last word from your side.
Certainly, Chair, and thank you very much to yourself and Honorable Marais for the question or the comments. We are certainly convinced that following the full consultative process at executive level, that the possibility of a shift to within the national space, if it does happen, then it will only happen under very, very, almost want to put it, narrow area in terms of the higher education space, which is in terms of the constitution, the responsibility of the Department of Higher Education and Training. We certainly are holding strong to the view that there are other options. There is now finally an openness by the National Department to ensure that those other options form part of the formal consultation which happens at executive level, and certainly the extra year does provide us with extra time to present a more solid case. I certainly take the point of Honourable Member Marais, because we are trying to ensure that the agricultural skills development program of Elsenburg Agricultural College remains and is ring-fenced to remain within the province. We certainly, in terms of the constitutional framework, it is a provincial mandate, and we want to hold fast to whatever is a provincial mandate. The higher education side, we believe there, as I say, there are other options, including exploring a stronger partnership with one or other higher education institution. We know that our Bachelor of Agriculture qualification is already accredited through Stellenbosch University. So we already have a very strong partnership with an alternative higher education institution. So, Chairperson and members, we remain hopeful that we'll be able to hold on to the college, because we recognize the importance of training of particularly young people for agriculture, that it needs to be formalized, that it needs to be responsive to this tremendous area of development and area of growth. We will certainly be updating Chair and members as the developments proceed over time. So with that, Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity to brief you, and I trust that we can rely on your further support as we defend our position in terms of making sure that agricultural training and education is protected for agriculture. Thank you very much, Chair.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jacobs. And in the absence of any hands, I believe you can excuse yourself. Thank you very much for your input today, and we wish you everything of the best. And I also assure you that from this committee side and from our oversight function, we will ensure that all the boxes are ticked before any decisions are taken. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
You.
And with that, over to Dr. Trotsky. Thank you.
Chairperson, thank you very much for this opportunity. So the purpose of this presentation is to talk about the agreement between the Western Cape Department of Agriculture and the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And in the presentation, I'm going to address three particular topics. The first one is why California, and then the second is how did we get there, and then finally what are the main components of this particular agreement. I think what we must understand is the Western Cape Department of Agriculture is a civil service organization. We are organ of state. And what we do as a department is to implement the mandate received by the executive authority from the electorate. In other words, the provincial, the local, and the national mandate. And there's 109 things that we have to do. And for that, we developed a particular theory of change, but that's not the topic of today's discussion. Whatever we do, we must do within a particular reality. I like to call it what God gave us, or some people say the cards that we were dealt. But that is our natural resources, the people of the province, and the structure of our economy. And quite often it doesn't make sense to say in Europe X, Y, or Z. That is not our reality. Our reality is our conditions here at the southernmost part of Africa. And then on the other side, there are certain things preventing us from doing, or some call it risks, in terms of environment, social, and economic environment. And I just want to stand a little bit quickly to these risks. And in 2020, the World Economic Forum had a list of risks according to likelihood and impact. And they normally release this risk register during January. So the highest there in terms of likelihood were extreme weather. The second is climate action, etc. In terms of impact was climate action failure. And right at the bottom of impact was infectious diseases. Of course, we know what happened in March 2020. So the 2021 risk register had infectious diseases right at the top, with climate action failure in the second place. And in terms of likelihood, extreme weather, climate action failure, etc. Now, the 2020 risk register actually reverted back to a large extent. Sorry, the 2022 risk register has reverted back. And number first is climate action failure, extreme weather, biodiversity loss, etc. And infectious diseases is down at 6th place. This year they did not make a distinction between likelihood and impact. They just had a consolidated risk register. So, but even in the 2022 risk report, what they indicated is that for the immediate, in other words, between 0 and 2 years, extreme weather, climate is number 1, climate action failure is number 3, and those in green are all in our particular space. Then what they say, 2 to 5 years, climate action failure is number 1, extreme weather is number 2, and biodiversity loss is at number 9. So we've got a very much a growing importance of climate action and environmental risk. And then the 5 to 10 years, they talk about climate action failure, extreme weather, biodiversity loss, natural resource crisis, human environmental damage. In other words, all these things that one can link back to our environment within which we have to produce, and this environment that is our sandpit, our cards that we've got within which to achieve the goals and objectives that the electorate has given to the government of the day. So this is the World Economic Forum's perspective. And if one then take a look in the global regions of the world, then we find that our Mediterranean climate in the Western Cape is actually, there are not many places with a similar climate. Evidently, around the Mediterranean Sea and parts of North Africa has got a very much a similar climate. But then if we look at the rest of the world, there's only 3 other places. The one is Western Australia and Southern Australia and Tasmania, then part of Chile, and of course California. So those are the very few places in the world with a climate similar to ours and whom would face similar challenges than we in the Western Cape would. So California, if one would take California as a country, it would be the 5th largest economy in the world. So it is an immense economy. It has got immense research potential and those sort of things. It's the biggest producer of agricultural products in the US. It's number 1 in milk production. There's about $50 billion in income received in the agricultural sector. There are more than 400 commodities. I think what they would call a commodity is something a little bit different than we would call a commodity, but the principle is there is a wide basket of agricultural production. They are a third of US vegetables and 2/3 of fruits and nuts comes from California. There's about 400,000 hectares of almonds, 400,000 hectares of grapes, and roughly 77,000 farms. So from an agricultural perspective, it is clearly a leader in the US and in the world. And so there's a lot of I think, potential synergy also in terms of products that's being produced there. If one look at their drought level over the past or over the period 2011 to 2015, then one see that in 2011 there was a small area that was abnormally dry. It moved to moderate drought, and in 2015 they experienced exceptional drought, very, very similar to the drought we experienced in 2017 and 2018. And I'm going to come back later because I think this is some of the areas where there are definite opportunities for us to work together. What is a little bit of a difference in California is that their irrigation is largely dependent on the snow cap in the Rocky Mountains. So normally there's a heavy snowfall in the Rockies, and when that snow and ice melt, the whole Sacramento Valley and the San Joaquin Valley receive water from that melting ice. The problem is that the past few years they did not experience that extreme heavy snowfall. So that is part of the reason why they experience this drought. And if one look at this picture on the right, it sort of reminds one to our own Theewaterskloof Dam in 2017-2018 during our drought. So that's a little bit of a background on why California. So the next area of the slide is how did we get there? And I must say I intentionally put this picture in as a dividing slide, because if one look at this picture, it is not clear whether this photo was taken in the Western Cape or in California, which is an indication of the similarities between our agricultural systems. So already in 2001, an agreement was signed between the Western Cape, the province of the Western Cape, and the state of California. And subsequent to that, there was 2 other agreements in the USA, the one in Florida in 1995 and in Georgia in 2014 was signed. Unfortunately, this original agreement, and I'll come back to that just now, has lapsed. Normally, these types of agreements has got a 5-year period, after which it is renegotiated or re-signed. And so this California agreement was not re-signed or taken up after 2006. And one of the reasons is, I think, because of the agreement with Georgia, which is part of the Regional Leaders Summit, that received a little bit more focus. So in the original agreement, there was a number of areas of collaboration. Agriculture exchange between Elsenburg and the University of Stellenbosch University, University of California, Davis, expertise on viticulture, fruit fly eradication, management and agriculture and veterinarian border control. There were some issues on education, public management, social services, tourism, film industry. So there was a whole basket of potential areas for cooperation. And because of this, you will see when we get to the new agreement, we are very particular on our aims and what we want to achieve, and not such a blanket type of approach. Because in my experience, it's very easy to sign a piece of paper, but it is a little bit more difficult to make that piece of paper work to the benefit of the people involved. Okay, so then on 15th of August 2019, the Secretary of State of California, Department of Food and Agriculture, visited the Western Cape. There was a delegation of about 10 different people from not only the state of California, but also of the Federal Department of Agriculture, some local government people, etc. It was an exploratory visit, and they are entering into a range of agreements with regions with a similar climate. For instance, they already signed agreements with Israel, Australia, Western Australia, and some other regions. So we received them on the 15th of August at Elsenburg, and basically we did a number of presentations. The one was on Smart Agri and our climate change response plan, the whole drought, floods and mitigation, and then drought crisis, the engagement with stakeholders that was driven by DDG Jacobs. And of course, Ms. Asia Peterson did the drought and floods presentation. And remember, this was a year after the major drought that we experienced in 2017, 2018. So that was then very high on the agenda. We then took them to a site visit the afternoon. The first was to the Berg River Dam, the whole fluid reconstruction and rehabilitation site, which is the picture there when it was released late last year. We took them to an invasive alien clearing site, and then, of course, we took them to roosterbrood and tea, which was provided by some of the local people involved in the alien clearing. So that was the visit. We then also invited Secretary Ross to do a presentation and the BFAP baseline launch of that Friday, the 16th of August 2019. And during that BFAP baseline launch, she then also did a presentation on the California's experience in terms of climate change and climate change mitigation. What is the California delegation, when they came here, they had a draft agreement that they wanted us to sign. And we said, given on our past experience, we would not at that stage enter into an agreement. We would rather see if there are appetite for cooperation and if there are certain synergies that develop out of this particular interaction. And in the end, it is all about people. If people find each other and work together, then there is area for cooperation. So following that visit, of course, there was COVID-19, and we could not have people exchange. But what we did is we had two webinars. The first webinar was on water use efficiency. And from our side, again, the whole issue of irrigation and drought in the Western Cape, which was presented by Asia Peterson and Mr. Lau Pinaar from Agricultural Economics. And then from California side, Ms. Janine Jones did a presentation on irrigation and drought in California. Also, then Mr. Chris Channel did a presentation on water use efficiency. And I think this is, for me, one of the main differences between the Western Cape and California, and one of the main areas where we can learn from them. And this is that the majority of California's irrigation is actually from groundwater. So, and they spent a lot of time to analyze groundwater, to identify where are the sources, the strength of the sources, the qualities, and around that, a whole range of models to be developed as part of their analysis. And for us in the Western Cape, we are to a large extent, we are dependent on surface water and damming of surface water. And I think for us in future, the potential is to do a lot of additional analysis on subterranean water sources, but also on storage in subterranean areas. And this is for me a key area where we can work together. And this is one of the areas that I've linked our Chief Water Engineer, Mr. Peter Koik, with Mr. Chris Channel, and to see if cooperation can come from that. The rest of this webinar was governance, regulations, and demand management, Ms. Carla Nemeth from their side. And part of this was also an overview of their interventions. And this picture in here is one of their interventions as part of climate change response, is their Healthy Soil Program. And this picture is an indication of the result of that. We also then had this presentation on ecological infrastructure from Marlene Laros. Dr. Amrit Gunasakara did a presentation on their water efficiency and enhancement program. And then, of course, our own experience, the governance system of Day Zero, and Mr. Colin Dainer did that presentation. This was followed by a separate webinar on Climate Smart. And what we did there is then first we got Prof. Peter Johnson in, on the science of climate agriculture, our perspective, and then also a speaker from California on their perspective on climate change, because it is not the same. Our origins of climate change is a little bit driven by different perspectives from theirs, but the impacts will be very much the same. Their climate smart agriculture program and response, again, Dr. Amrit Gunasakara did that presentation. Prof. Stephanie Mitchley from our side did the Smart Agri Plan and how we implement that. And then there were two presentations on climate smart tools, the one from California and from our side in the Western Cape, Peter Koik did the Fruit Look, and Cape Farm Mapper, Mr. Francois Kuchlenberg, did the presentation on Cape Farm Mapper. So based on this, we said, listen, it is clear that there are areas of mutual interest, areas where we can cooperate. And in this process, Prof. Mitchley and Prof. Johnson, we also got them involved, and they also see, so it's not only from the department, but from the wider agricultural sector, there is opportunities for cooperation. So the key components of this agreement is the goals is to exchange information on climate change mitigation and best practices. And one of the things here, what California is doing is they are developing a database on best practices in climate change mitigation. And a lot of the things we are doing will have an impact or a potential use in that area, and particularly the interventions on the Smart Agri Plan and sustainable farming and things like that. Connect academic institutions to do further research and collaboration on water use efficiency in the agricultural sector, and then further the use of and availability of climate smart agriculture technology and on-farm practices to improve soil health, water use efficiency, modeling, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, etc. So the objective of this framework is to create a flexible framework to promote mutually beneficial relationship towards the exchange of information and on-farm practices and technologies to support a robust climate resilient agricultural sector, to work collaboratively to further international engagement by subnational governments on climate smart agricultural initiatives. The specific areas of cooperation is, as I indicated, expand the exchange of information on on-farm practices, robust and climate resilient agricultural sector through initiatives focus on particularly, but not limited to, the following areas of cooperation: improve water use efficiency, modeling the impact of climate change on the sector, exchange of information regarding policies and regulations, governance models, documentation, intergovernmental and international visits involving policymakers, regulators, academic institutions, and businesses. Now, I was informed that the Standing Committee is considering such a visit, and such a visit would definitely fall under this particular category, intergovernmental and international visits involving policymakers, etc. Joint activities such as organization of and participation in seminars, workshops, things like that, as I indicated what we already did, and facilitation of innovative partnerships, bringing together parties from public, private, and academic institutions for bilateral or multilateral to co-develop technologies and solutions. I'm close to the end of my presentation. So the specific actions may include facilitate joint webinars, 1 or 2 annually, bring together representatives of government, academia, and agriculture to focus on climate smart agriculture practices and policies. The participants will aim to conduct climate smart agricultural policy missions to one another's country. The participants will contribute to relevant conferences, trade shows, and other knowledge sharing activities in California and in the Western Cape. What is not included is exchange of funds. The intention is not that any funds will flow in any direction. And there are also no obligation of funds by other participant as part of this agreement. Each participant will carry all costs that will be incurred by the partner. Employees will work under the orders and responsibility of their partner to the agreement, and each partner will manage its own employee relationships. So, Chairperson, thank you very much for this opportunity to give a little bit of an overview. I just, in terms of your earlier question, if I can just say, the intention is that this agreement will be signed on the 11th of March, Friday the 11th of March, 4 o'clock the afternoon. That's the only time that the Western Cape and California has got a similar time. So unfortunately, we have to do interaction late in the afternoon because then it's early in the morning. And the intention is that we will use the e-platform of the US Consulate in Cape Town for the formal proceedings. Chairperson, so that is then where we are. What I also just must say is this agreement, there was a cabinet submission on this agreement, and Cabinet has approved that we can proceed with this agreement in the format that we have submitted to Cabinet, and as I've indicated now during this presentation. Thank you very much. I'm not quite sure. I presume there are some questions that people would like to ask.
Thank you so much, Dr. Trotsky. Honourable members, the floor is open for you. The first hand raised is that of Honourable Marais. Any other hands?
Thank you so much, Speaker, Chairperson. Yes, I agree that California was possibly the best region to visit first. The greater part of California is a desert, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, so there's a lot of similarities, especially in terms of water shortages and climate change, etc. So let me start off by saying, if you went to California, was it only the Western Cape Department that was part of this visit? Did you take of our own farmers with you? Because I must tell you that our commercial farmers are not doing bad. I mean, they can't learn anything from California. We have a great farming community in South Africa. The only thing is that it excludes certain people, and the emerging farmers were not part of the commercial sector of our farming. So when you're going to have all this webinars, who will be part of the webinars? If you're serious about emerging farmers getting to know far better farming methods and issues like that, will they be part of it? And will commercial farmers also be invited to be part of this webinar so that the benefit of such a visit and this agreement can be felt throughout South Africa, or in the Western Cape at least? That is what I first of all wanted to ask. Then I want to know, to what extent are we comparable to California? How mechanized are they compared to us? We depend on labor. It's important that the methodology they use don't necessarily apply to us. America is one of the most advanced countries, so obviously they'll be farming will be very mechanized. So what did we learn in terms of job creation on our farms? Was Casidra part of this trip? We paid Casidra a lot of money to advise us. Maybe they could have picked up a couple of tips on how to serve us. So if they didn't go with, why not? And then I was going to ask you, why was the agreement not re-signed in 1996 Was it a political decision by the incoming government, or was there other reasons for it? And what did we learn about organic waste? And what do we hope to learn about organic waste, climate change? And there's a lot of other things. Bees, they do all these things, which we are a bit backward on. They also do bee farming. And I'd like to know what you have learned from them in your visits. What do you hope to learn in future? Because I'm sure South African commercial farmers are not behind any other country in terms of farming. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Marais. I do recognize the hand of Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm sorry I joined a little bit late. I was still in the meeting, but I'm happy to be here. Chair, I just want to find out, I mean, this is a very a good, one of the best initiatives that the department is really taking. And when you look at California, it's really, I'm looking forward to really have the in-depth information of the contributions or the best practices that they can continue to share with Western Cape. But one thing that I just want to find out, one of the risks that we have in South Africa is about the land protection. So I want to find out from California, the land protection strategies that they do have, if they have engaged on that level about it. What are the systems that they have in place that can be the best practices when coming to South Africa, if there is any that has been shared with Western Cape so far? I think that's all that will come from me, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Maseko. And Dr. Trotsky, perhaps just from my side, to what extent has organised agriculture already taken part in some of these exchange visits to California and between California and the Western Cape? And it seems to me what you're saying is that they might be experts in terms of the utilization of groundwater. Now, we do know that in the Sandveld and other areas, we also rely on groundwater, and there are some concerns about the sustainability of the use thereof. Do you believe that this is the kind of field in which we as South Africans can benefit from the experience of our colleagues there in California? And with that, over to you then for your responses.
Chairperson, members, thank you very much for these questions. I am just completing my notes before I answer because I'm afraid that I may miss something. Just first, in terms of the questions by Honourable Member Marais, no visit has taken place yet. And I'm actually not quite sure when the last visit from the Department of Agriculture was to California, for various reasons. The one is, yeah, we struggle to, California is on the other side of the world, and there are certain priorities, etc. And then, of course, there was COVID-19. So the past 2 years, no visits could take place. So no, there was not in the past 5 years, according to my knowledge, I can't remember of anybody going to California. But evidently, given where we are now with COVID-19 and that we will probably move out of the pandemic, we want to look at the new year, whether any visits can take place. So that then leads me to the second question, that is in terms of who will be part of the webinars. Well, that is one of the lessons we've learned out of COVID-19, in the sense is that one can get the same well, not the same, but one can involve many more people in such an event if one make use of a webinar. So for the 2 webinars that we have conducted, we actually did invite commercial agriculture and smallholder agriculture. We've got what we call a stakeholder list in the department. So those are the people that we invited. We used our Smart Agree mailing list, and we also directly contacted Agriculture Western Cape and AFASA to participate in the webinars. And I think in that way, one can then make use of this opportunity to have a much wider reach than if one have to travel to California, which is, we must always remember, is a very expensive exercise in any international trip. Okay, so in terms of Casidra, no. Casidra was not part of the trip because there has not been any trips. But yes, Casidra is part of our stakeholders, so they were also invited to be part of the of the webinars. Okay, I think what is important is the question around how do, and this is more than just California. This is more about how do we engage in an environment where agriculture has got a very employment creation responsibility within our context, whereas in many developed countries, there is a major shortage of labor. We've we've seen it now in Brexit, where the combination of Brexit and COVID-19 has resulted that a lot of products in the UK was never harvested because of restrictions to migrant labor and also non-European, well, non-British citizens from the rest of Europe couldn't travel to the UK to do harvesting and stuff like that. And this is one of the reasons why we've been asking the question for the past 5 years plus, is how do we, within our context, within the cards, this is part of the cards that we were dealt in our local reality. Now, how do we ensure competitiveness in the agricultural sector, given the new technologies, given the pressure on the developing world, who is developing most of the agricultural technology, their need for labor shedding devices, and in our case, where we have to have labor absorption agricultural practices. And this is at the core of our response strategy to the 4th Industrial Revolution. Now, just as an example here, by being more efficient, by improving our water use efficiency, by looking at subterranean water, alternative sources of water, we can expand the area under production. And by expanding the area under production, we create more employment opportunities. At the same time, you create other opportunities. For instance, we do a lot of work on drones and things like that. You create a lot of other employment. Somebody must maintain that drone, and it's not rocket science. It is something that a person with certain mechanical skills can do. Data usage, using of sensors in new technology. So there's a whole range of new careers that we can open by using these new technologies. So I think, Mr. Marie, to come back to your question, in terms of we are more dependent on labor than California, where 90% of their employment are actually foreigners. This is a reality, but by being responsible in how we engage with them and make sure that that the relevant technology is adapted and bringing back to the Western Cape, we can ensure that that we achieve our own objectives or also our government objectives. Why was the 2001 agreement allowed to lapse? I am not sure. I think from my perspective, there are two reasons. The one reason is it was too wide. You know, you can turn an ox wagon with 2 teams of oxen 3 times within that agreement. And when it's too wide, nobody take it seriously. And the second is, it is also about intention, both from the side of California and from the side of the Western Cape. And what is, we got a very, very clear message from California that this is for them a priority, and they would like this to work. And I think this is then the stage where one creates the relationships between people to make sure that the agreement works. What to learn about organic waste and bee farming? Yes, there are a lot of things that is there to learn, and this is the knowledge where one can pick it up. I think what is also important here is in the sense that it is not only about the department, it is also about institutions such as the universities, other players in this area, etc. And what we should never forget is that there are a number of farmers already who have got this agreement. Well, for instance, Guardian Peak, one of the wine farms just outside Stellenbosch, one of their wines is Cirrus, a Shiraz, and it is actually a partnership between Guardian Peak and a farm in California where they exchange wines, they market it together, they exchange knowledge. Their winemaker spend some time here and our winemaker on that side. So I think those types of things are already happening. And that's good, and we can just strengthen that from our side. Honourable Member Maseko, I'm not quite sure what you mean with land protection. I presume that is in terms of soil quality, protection of erosion and things like that. And that is where, for instance, their program, Healthy Soils program, which is also part of their climate change response. And I think that is where we can learn from them, as well as certain modeling elements, etc. Honourable Chair, I am totally in agreement with you that I think one of the areas where we can learn is in groundwater modeling and how to use that. Particularly the situation we are in the Sandveld. Personally, I think groundwater is the way to go in Sandveld, certain areas of the Little Karoo, etc., where it does not make sense to only focus on surface water, but we need to focus also on subterranean water. But I must know, honestly, I'm an economist. I'm not an engineer or an water scientist. So that is my personal opinion. So I hope I addressed all the questions. I don't know if there's any other questions that I can answer.
Honorable Andrikas? I think we, okay, you are back.
Thank you. Next, Honourable Maseko, your hand is raised again.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Mr. Trotsky answered me, but maybe if I can do a follow-up to just, or maybe give a clarity that I just wanted to find out, like in Western Cape, one of the challenges is of the overusage of the agriculture and the agricultural land parcels. So I wanted to find out if maybe they do have something in place that can counteract to that, because of the reality is the demand of food is increasing on an everyday basis, and the agricultural land parcels are shrinking as the land invasion happens. So whatever land parcel that we have secured for agriculture, we have to maximize and try at the same time to protect it to also be reusable. So I just was interested to hear if they've got something in place that they can share for best practices for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. And then before Mr. Trotsky responds, I recognize the hand of Honourable Marais.
Thank you so much, Chair. Dr. Trotsky, I just want to ask you, what is this pilot grant program which they have for irrigation systems? Do you have any knowledge about that? Because that's one thing that we could perhaps latch onto. Well, irrigation is something that we will definitely have to do, especially places like Zouar, Amalistane, and those areas, irrigation, and I believe they got a pilot grant program for irrigation. And also, they seems to be very drought-stricken now, whereas before it was not the case. Maybe we can learn, why did they come from very arable land to drought-stricken areas? And cannabis, now that we've passed laws and the president spoke about cannabis, cannabis is one of the big items now on the agricultural agenda. Do you intend pursuing that to ask what can we do in terms of cannabis farming?
Over to you, Dr. Trotsky.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Honourable Chairperson, thank you. Thanks, Member Maseko. I understand now better what your question is, and this is one of the rationales underpinning the database of climate change response strategies that they want to develop. And so that won't only be Western Cape and California, but also the other partners from Israel and Western Australia and those sort of things, to develop a system of or a database of best practices in land use, in climate change mitigation and things like that. And in that process, to learn what is happening. From our side, for instance, minimum tillage is a major contribution that we could submit there. So yes, definitely we have best practices that we would really like to share, but I presume there will also be other best practices that we can learn from. So that is important, and one of the benefits that we see forthcoming out of this. And you are correct. Agricultural land is shrinking. The demand on that land is increasing. So the only thing that we can do is to use that land more efficient and to a higher yield, and in the end to the benefit of all. But I think what is important to remember is that the most constraining, the most limiting constraint for agricultural development in the Western Cape is not land, it's water. If one has water, either through additional water sources or water saving or anything like that, then agricultural production can expand. One only have to look in the Hex River, the quality of the soils where they produce some of the best table grapes in the world. So land is not the limiting factor. It is water which is actually the limiting factor. Then to Honourable Member Marais, their pilot grant system for irrigation systems. I think this is one of the differences between the Western Cape and California. Evidently, our first robust. Our pockets are not as deep as those in California, so it is not something that we can duplicate here. But at the same time, we do have certain via the CASP framework and via other incentives, we do have the opportunity to do an intervention in certain areas. And for instance, a community of Ibn Eser, the smallholder farmers or the guys with the watertuinpersele in Ibn Eser, between ourselves and the National Department of now Agricultural Land Reform and Rural Development, but at that stage, Land Reform and Rural Development, we developed a bulk irrigation system, and we as agriculture took responsibility for the on-farm irrigation system, and is also part of one of our COVID-19 response strategies is to assist 80 of those smallholder farmers to establish lucerne as the first step in the process of getting their plots sustainable and generating an income over the longer term. Yes, they are currently very drought stricken. They the same as us. Drought is a cyclical phenomenon. For now, we still need to see what will be the impact of climate change over the longer term. So as we had a drought in 2017, 2018, we had the past season or two, we had very, very good rainfall seasons. Our dams are full, but we should never allow ourselves to be fooled. We will have another drought, and we need to prepare for that drought, and we need to be prepared to face that drought, not if, but when it comes. And this is the situation where California is in now. They had the major drought in 2015. They had some better intervening years, but they are now back into the clutches of that drought. Just one comment, I think one of the challenges California is sitting is their water licenses for subterranean water, to extract water from boreholes and things like that. That is regulated at the municipal level, at the local government level. So they are sitting with serious problems with overusing of the subterranean water source. And that is one of the reasons why they are so good at modeling. And that is one of the reasons why what we can learn from them. Need to focus on cannabis. Yes, cannabis is a major crop. There is a National Cannabis Master Plan. From our side in the province, it is one of the areas that we are focusing on, and our response and our response strategy. Unfortunately, at this stage, I cannot say too much about this, but this is definitely something that we need to focus on. However, just one comment on cannabis. In agriculture, there's a theory that was developed in the 1930s by a guy with the name of Cochrane, and it has got various names. Some people call it the Hock cycle, other people call it the cobweb theory, etc. But the short version of the long story is we must remember in agriculture, anything that goes up will come down. So there is now such a great interest in cannabis globally that a lot of cannabis and hemp is being planted, and investment going into primary and secondary infrastructure in the cannabis industry. And it's being driven by calculations on a product that is in most parts of the world today still illegal. So because it's illegal in large parts of the world, you've got inflated prices that's driving investment, and at the stage there will be an overproduction. So what I'm not saying is no to cannabis. It should be part of our strategy. What I'm just saying is that whenever we do calculations on cannabis, we must be very sure that we do not do it at today's inflated prices, but at realistic prices that we may experience 10 or 15 years down the line. And if we can make the sum work at those realistic prices, then we are sitting with a long-term sustainable industry. But that said, yes, from the side of the department, we definitely has got an interest in this. Although it's not part of the agreement, we do have an interest in it, and it is one of the areas that we are exploring. Chairperson, I hope I answered all the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Trotsky. Honourable members, any further questions? Perhaps just Honourable Marais, please proceed.
Doctor, you say you're going economics. That is your forte now. You say two things. You say, one, the inflated prices, and then you compare inflated prices with overproduction. Economically, that doesn't make sense, although I don't have a degree in economics. I don't pass my second year economics at varsity. I know when there's overproduction, then prices come down, doesn't go up. So I don't know why you say that there's inflated prices and at the same time there's overproduction worldwide. How do you compare the two?
Dr. Trotsky.
Chairperson, Honourable Chairperson, thank you very much. Yes, I didn't want to spend too much time on this, but this is where the concept of the Hawk cycle comes from. Let us use an example, and one can start at any part in the cycle. Let us say at a certain today, the price of hogs or pigs, pig meat is extremely low. So you are sitting with a lot of farmers that has invested in this capacity to produce. And quite often in agriculture, we are sitting with a situation that when you've made an investment, you cannot use that investment for anything else. Once you've put up a milking parlor, you have to milk cows. You can't milk goats in that. So you've got that investment and you continue at the margin. The process, the result of that is low prices. People continue putting that prices under further pressure until the farmer gets at the stage to say, okay, now it's gone. Now I close down my plant. But at that very, very low prices, a lot of farmers take that decision. So in the process, you learn, you lose a lot of those production capital. And because you lose the production capital and the production capacity, your volume of production decline. As the volume decline, the prices start to increase. But there's not a one-on-one relationship between reinvestment and a decline or a rise in prices, because a lot of those farmers with the skills will say, listen, this is the last time I'm farming with hogs. I don't do it again. So in the process, because there's now a shortage, the price of your product increase. And at a stage, it raises so high that farmers now start investing again. And because you've got this high prices, and we've seen it in ostriches, we've seen it in kibissen, we've seen it in a lot of instances. Because the price gets so high, farmers, even those guys that has decided never in my life again, now start investing in this, leading eventually to an oversupply. Now, what we must remember here is, because it works with hogs, if you've got a pig, that you can't suddenly have more piglets. You first have to have a boar and a sow. They would have a litter. That litter has to reach maturity before they can have another litter. So in that process, it is not an immediate response. You need a response of 12 to 18 months before you can start producing. And because there are at that stage so many piglets that is being produced and so many adult pigs, that you exacerbate the overproduction side. So that's why they call it the hog cycle. It's a clear cycle, and depending on what you're working with hogs or calves or sheep, depending on the production cycle, there's a clear trend that one can get. Now, in the case of cannabis, there are artificial constraints currently to cannabis in most of the world, in terms of the volume that you can produce. And in South Africa, it's only for certain small own use at this stage. But because of that artificial constraints, your price of cannabis is above market price. So we are now at the top of the hog cycle, and in the case of cannabis. And there will be a decline. I don't know, I think it was yesterday in the Sake Burger or in Sake Rapport over the weekend, where there was an article about cannabis, and where I think it was a guy with the name of the Toy that actually made this point. It's a private producer of cannabis that made this point into saying we must be careful in how we do our calculations in cannabis. But Chairperson, that was a short question, and I had a long answer, and it's not the purpose of this meeting. So my apologies if my answer is too long.
We've got the time, and thank you for sharing that information. It's not often that we have the opportunity to get this kind of expert advice. Can I just ask, did you respond to my question whether organized agriculture, our farmers, have indicated in the past that they benefit from visiting California? Do you know of exchanges in this regard? And then secondly, what can we do to ensure that, again, this doesn't just become a piece of paper, an agreement on paper, and that it's not, kept alive and really benefiting the people of the Western Cape? Over to you.
Chairperson, my apologies. Yes, I think, well, what I wanted to say is also in this space, we are working with financial constraints. And we must be very careful how we support this agreement without it becoming exorbitant. One area of doing that is to make sure that the people we get there are the people that can bring back the information to the biggest benefit of all, and particularly somebody like Prof. Peter Johnson from UCT, who's a leader in the space of climate change. It will make a lot of sense to enable him to work with the people in California on certain of these things. In terms of commercial farmers, yes, there are a lot of commercial farmers that is currently working with farmers in California. I've used the example of farmers here from Guardian Peak that actually work with Cirrus in California, and they produce wine together. And in the wine industry, there's a lot of winemakers, that use the difference in season between the southern and northern hemisphere to get experience, exposure in our winter, the northern summer or the northern harvesting time, and bring that information back to the Western Cape. So there is an active exchange in the commercial sector, and I think we must make sure that it is also from a technical and an academic perspective that it maintains. How to keep it alive? I think, I don't think I know. In the end, such an agreement, there's a lot of will that need to go into such agreement. In other words, your decision makers need to be in the situation where they say, we are prepared to invest money and time, and money is not only travel. Money is also scarce resources such as our expertise, our people, to work on a collaborative project and to keep it alive. And I think from your perspective as a standing committee, It is also then to measure this will that is going into such an agreement, and to see to what extent it is maintained, and the momentum in this agreement is kept alive. I hope it answered the question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Honourable members, on this point, any further questions or input from your side? We will go on to the resolutions and the approval of minutes, etc. later on. In the absence of that, I want to say thank you very much to Dr. Trotsky for briefing us on this. These are intergovernmental agreements signed by governors and premiers of the various states and provinces. And therefore, I think we as public representatives in the Western Cape really needed to take note of this and this agreement. And thank you very much. It seems to me from the side of California, there's already been an outreach to South Africa. Thank you also to you and your team for receiving them. And I trust that they went back with a lot of insight and hopefully a lot of enthusiasm for this agreement. And I do hope that they will also invite you and your colleagues to go and visit them on behalf of the Western Cape Department of Agriculture. So thank you very much for that. We wish you everything of the best. Thank you for determining the contents of this agreement, and also convey to Dr. Sebopetsa and your colleagues our appreciation, not only for this briefing, but for the negotiations that led to this draft agreement, and we're looking forward to the signing of this agreement. It seems to be in about two and a half weeks from now. So thank you very much, Dr. Trotsky. If you want to depart with some words, you're welcome to do so. And then the committee will continue with its administrative business. Thank you.
Chairperson and honourable members, thank you very much for this opportunity to do this presentation. Thanks for the good words, and thanks for the support in this initiative. We appreciate it from the side of the department. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Good. Thank you very much. And I see there's some applause also from Honourable Maseku. Keep up the good work, and you are excused. Thank you, honourable members. Honourable members, this then brings us to the next item on the agenda. As you may have heard, or for those that may have joined late, we moved the sequence of the agenda somewhat around. We've already dealt regarding the future of the agricultural college. We are now at agenda point number 3, resolutions or actions. Perhaps if I could ask that we perhaps just don't forget about the input we received regarding the future of the Elsenburg Agricultural College. Are there any resolutions that any of you would like to propose regarding the possible migration to the Department of Higher Education and Training in terms of the agricultural education or agricultural offering in the Western Cape? Honourable Maseku, your hand is recognised.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think Mayor Shireen will give us guidance if maybe I'm out of order. Is there a possibility that we can engage with the higher education or whatever the department that wants to take over, so that we can hear the rationale behind this thing that the Elsenburg, that they feel they want to take it over? What is it that they want to fix? And what plans do they have about it? And I'm asking this because of much as there can be a motivation enough being negative or positive. We have seen the colleges of education being taken over, the didn't work, the nurses colleges, it was the same thing. Now, this is the heartbeat of Western Cape agriculture that is, the youth are going for training and they are employed, and I'm afraid of if it doesn't work, I'm of the system of if it is not broken, don't fix it. If that can happen and it doesn't work, we're going to increase the unemployment while we're still trying to fight the unemployment to make sure that our youth, they get the jobs. It's just that concern, a huge concern from my side that I feel we have to engage so that it can be clear when we talk to the higher education department that how do we feel about this takeover of Elsenbeck. I think that's all from me, Chair.
Good, thank you, Honourable Masiko. If I hear you correctly, what you're saying is that we perhaps invite the Minister of Higher Education and Training, as well as these senior officials, to brief us on things such as, what liberty will the Elsenburg Agricultural College still have to determine its own curriculum, to be able to offer training specific to the needs of Western Cape agriculture. To what extent will it benefit the students in terms of having a central control and or funding for training in the Western Cape, particularly when it comes to the tertiary education in the sense of university education, which includes things like research and so on, and well-resourced libraries and so on. That I think we all agree that the Constitution is quite clear on that, but there are some grey areas in terms of education, but specifically vocational training, which is not necessarily tertiary.
Chair, I think my concern is more of, remember Elsenberg gives about, there are the 3 months courses, skills development also. It takes the skills development into place. So when they say they take over, there are some gray areas, like you mentioned, that we have to ask. I mean, Elsenberg is in our domain. It's our one place that we do an oversight. So if we get someone say that, no, I'm going to take over, we need to ask the questions and get the answers to the rationale behind it. So those kids or those youth, and I mustn't say kids, the youth that attend maybe the 3 months courses to be taught how to do your artificial insemination, those youth that attend to be taught the skills of anything that has to do, maybe a pig farming in a small scale and all that, where are they going to go to be taught if Elsenberg is taken? So it's those concerns that are our bread and butter, that our farm workers, they just go to get the training and then they improve their lives with the knowledge that they get, whether 3 months or, because they can't afford all the time to pay your Stellenbosch university fees for them to fall under the Stellenbosch. So we need to be mindful and try to check what is the rationale and how is it going to, how does it add value if they have to take over?
Yeah. I think, thank you very much. Also still on Elsenburg, Honourable Marais.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're going to take it wider. This is a battle for centralization versus devolution of powers to provinces. This is a move by Blade Nzimande to play the big boss, and he can't even do a good job in the tertiary sector. So we've got to be far more decisive in what we are saying here. This courses, if we design courses which is only a 6 months course or 9 months course, nobody can consider that as tertiary. It is an entrance examination they must pass as an emerging farmer, and then we can work out that it is in 3 stages. The first stage is you have a 6-month induction course, and then you have a 1-year final course. That's not tertiary. It will stay as primary course. It's an entry level, and we've got to find a resolution to capture this, and Shireen is very good at that. We got to retain the training and subsidizing of these emerging farmers at Elsenburg School, and it must be retained by us as primary agricultural training centers. Primary agricultural training centers, we got to hold on to that, or they will only have English speakers at these colleges, and Afrikaans students that won't make it, because the same will happen as what happened to UWC. It's now an English university, and our students are struggling from the Western Cape, because since Jakes Gerwel was there and Professor Van der Roos, it was predominantly an Afrikaans university. We mustn't allow that to happen again. This is a takeover, total takeover of the Western Cape's powers, and we've got to fight it with tooth and nail. So I propose that we have a strong resolution listing the points I have just mentioned, or we will pay a heavy price for Afrikaans-speaking students that will not have access to training or be elected to attend these colleges.
Thank you, Honourable Marais. Can I just ask, Honourable Marais has made a proposal that we express our concerns also with regard to the language policy.
Chair, I have my hand up. Don't know if you...
Yes, can I just ask Honourable America, is this linking on to what Honourable Marais said?
Yeah, you're asking for resolutions, you know. It's, it's part of that.
Yeah. Okay, still on Elsenburg and still on the centralization or not of Elsenburg. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm not a full-time member of the committee, so I don't know whether the matter had been discussed previously. But my concern is that if we have listened to what Mr. Jacobs reported to the committee, is that it was a very vague overview of where we are now with regard to the proposed takeover, what could, for a lack of a better word. So my concern is that he did mention that they have managed to kick the can down the road to next year, and there are 5 options and scenarios that they will pursue before this matter could be sort of concluded. So for us now to engage the National Department to ask for a rationale as to why they want to take over Elsenburg's function, I don't think it is perhaps appropriate at this stage before we fully explore and engage the department regarding all the matters related to their perhaps engagement and the regulatory framework and all of those other 5 areas for exploration, clarity on those, and then we know where we are, and we should then provide the department the space and to navigate and engage the National Department and Treasury around those matters, and Executive, of course. And this committee as an oversight committee, will then obviously also exercise its oversight with regard to that particular process, and if need be during that stage, there becomes a need and an urgency engaged the National Department, and at that stage it be done. But I don't think as an immediate first task we should explore that avenue at this stage. I may have missed a previous discussion on this matter, but that is my humble submission.
Thank
And
you.
with okay, I'll have another
Can I
resolution.
just first, so if I understand you correctly, what you're saying, and for me it makes a lot of sense, is say don't invite the Department of Higher Education and Training until you're fully briefed, fully prepared, fully armed with all your questions and the issues that would require clarity. Rather first invite the Department of Agriculture Western Cape back to brief us on the whole situation and their views, and that those 5 scenarios that they and you refer to. Am I correct?
That's correct, Chair. Thank you.
Excellent. Good. Thank you. You wanted to add to that?
Chairman, this is not what I said. What Mr. America says is totally different. We report to the minister, provincial minister. The resolutions doesn't go to national. I never said that. I said we've got to consider a resolution which will go as our committee's resolve to our own minister, Minister Mayor. He must decide if you want to take it further. But I never said we are going to talk directly to national. We can't do it.
Okay.
We go as an advice to the provincial minister. That was what I said.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Marais. It was my suggestion, and I think both you and Honourable America says no. Let's not invite the Department of Higher Education now. We're not excluding such a possibility in the future, but let's first just deal at provincial level with the issue in hand. Honourable America, it was my impression that you wanted to add another item. Honourable Maseko, can I just check? Yes, let me. Your hand is raised, Honourable Maseko. Let me just check with Honourable America. He has now lowered his hand, but I did get the impression that he wanted to continue in that vein.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm done with that particular resolution. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, over to you, Honourable Maseko.
Chairperson, thank you very much. The first point is the issue of the Afrikaans speaking. I think the resolution, whatever that we take in the committee, it has to cover whether it's Tswana, Pedi or Zulu, or it's not all about the Afrikaans only in this committee. That's number one. Number two, Chair, the issue of Elsenburg, it didn't start this term, it started the past term that the National was saying they want to take over. It has been a to and fro. And we don't, my take is that we don't do oversight on the outcome always. Sometimes it might be we are short-sighted on the information, or sometimes it might be we don't have all the information. The information that we get is from the Department of Agriculture in the province also, or from Elsenburg. National, they've got another understanding of what is it that they want to do. So I hear you when you say, Member America, what he's saying makes sense to you. But what I'm saying also makes sense to me, that can we find out why are they persuading this? I mean, it's been year after year after year that they push back and they want to come in, they push back and they want to come in. So I was thinking that our oversight is not for the outcome only. And it's not, remember that the department, they're running their own thing. This is the parliament that is doing the oversight. So if I am putting as a suggestion that can we engage maybe national, if they agree, if they don't agree, it's another story. We can't force them, but if they agree that they can engage with us to show us a reason why. I don't think it's something that is untoward to the process. We are not interfering with the process of the department in responding to national, but it will be, we are empowered with the information of why do they want to take over Elsenburg. That's what's coming from me. It was based on that I want to be empowered with more information. I don't interfere with any processes of the department at all. That was not the rationale behind asking for that resolution. Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Honourable Maseko. Honourable Murray.
Chair, I think Honourable Maseko is muddying the waters unnecessary. Since when is Zulu and Swana and Sesotho in our constitution in the Western Cape as official languages? The only official languages in the Western Cape is Afrikaans, English, and isiXhosa. I don't know why she now choose to add all the other 11 languages. I think she's just looking for a fight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I don't think she was looking for a fight, but let's not fight here today. But I think the issues have been raised, and it's particularly, I think, the issue regarding the language policies and where it will be determined, etc. Obviously, I think we are all in agreement that you know, we believe in the Constitution's multilingualism, and that obviously you want, where practically possible, learners to study in the language which will benefit them most and which they prefer to study in. Good. That is the issue on Elsenburg, and I think we've captured a number of items there. The next one is now this agreement that seems to be set up for signing on the 11th of March between the Western Cape and the Government of California. Honourable members, are there any aspects regarding that briefing that you would like to pursue any further, or resolutions that you would like to link onto that presentation? If you could just indicate by raising your hands. Honourable Murray.
Chairperson, I would have preferred that this committee also be part of the hybrid meeting that's going to take place. Otherwise, if we're not part of the webinar, we don't know what they're discussing, and we must sit and wait till they finish, whereas we could have influenced decisions taken there. Even if they say, well, only 2 or 3 of us, especially the chairperson, must be part of it, at least the committee is represented. But we can't let them talk and have webinars and we're not even part of it. We must be a central part of that. Because what's happening now, the Premier is already, in his cabinet, has already agreed to whatever is going to be in this agreement. They've already agreed. They bypassed the legislation, never reported back to us, we have no hand in it, and they're going to sign agreements, and some of the things in that agreement can become part of budgets which we must okay, expenses which we must allocate money to, and that is a legislation function. So where is this oversight running to? What happens with oversight, even with agreements, if we are not going to be part of the webinars? So I'm making a plea to you and to Mr. America that you consider this, that we say that if there's going to be a webinar, the committee want to be represented on it.
Good, thank you. So that is the proposed resolution. In the obviously, honourable members, it's open for discussion, but that is currently on the table. And unless anybody differs from that, we will be asking to be invited not only to the signing ceremony, even if it's hybrid, but also to relevant webinars when this agreement is being discussed, etc. Honourable Maseko.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, invitation, it must always, if we request the invitation to the committee, I agree with you, not just the chairperson. But I'm a little uncomfortable with the issue of the negotiation of the agreement, that we become part of the negotiations and all that. And also we need to be mindful of the COVID also, that we request, and then if wherever they are going to sign, the space is there, will it accommodate us to also be there? So we need to be rational in some of the resolutions that are we talk about, to make sure that we are doable. We just don't put the department under pressure unnecessarily so. And I'm not casting aspersions to anyone. It's my personal feeling to that, Chair. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Honourable Maseko. Any other input, honourable members? Thank you. So I think what Honourable Maseko says is that we not necessarily be present, you know, and particularly not as part of the negotiations, but that in terms of the signing ceremony, I think it will just add to the level of interest in this signing ceremony. If the honourable members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament on this particular committee could also be in attendance and also show our appreciation and support for such an intergovernmental agreement. Honourable America.
Thank you, Chair. I think with regard to the implementation of the agreement, I think that the department should report to this committee at least once per annum on the progress and the nuts and bolts with regard to the rollout and implementation of the agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you. And I take it that it carries the support of this committee, that proposal of yours, that once every year some feedback is given to the committee in terms of how this agreement is being implemented and particularly the benefits. Honourable Maseko, over to you again.
Thank you, Chair. I think another one, it will be for the committee to take a resolution also to, as we do have the oversight, international basis for an oversight, to also go and look at the fields of California. How do they look? How are they doing all those that they're saying they're doing live on CNN? That will be very nice to see their practices in practicality while we are there.
Good, thank you for that proposal. So Honourable Maseko, and particularly since they refer to the policymakers, and I think that then when it comes to the acceptance of policy, etc., agricultural policy and so on, that falls squarely in the provincial government's domain and also that of the provincial parliament. So there is this proposal that we as a committee perhaps undertake a study visit to California and see what we can gain in terms of perhaps our policies and where our policy should perhaps be amended, etc. Honourable Marais.
Yes, I want to second Honourable America and Maseko's contributions to this effect. I just don't know whether we should put a time limit. We must just say they must report to us regularly. Let's not say once a year. By once a year, the horse is already out of the stable. It's too late. So I think that I see Honourable America raised the thumb. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. We must say they must report back to us regularly. And yes, I think we must also become more assertive. I've noticed since I'm in this new parliament that the committees they act scared of ministers. The committees are so scared of the ministers, they praat baie mooi met die ministers. So I think we've got to show some more assertiveness. If we are supposed to have an oversight, we've got to tell the minister we take our oversight function seriously. Look at today, and I know the minister might have had something very important, and I don't blame him, and I'm not casting aspersions, but it would have been nice if he was there. His input would have been very, very helpful in a lot of areas. So I think that in future, perhaps this committee must show some more energy and more muscle in that regard. Thank you, Speaker, Chairman.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Honourable Marais. Honourable members, I don't see any further hands. So are you happy for us then to close the session on the resolutions and actions flowing from the input that we've received today?
Member Maran has raised their hand, Chair.
My apologies, Honourable Maran, please, the floor is yours. I don't see his hand.
Yeah, I think his connection is bad, Chair.
Okay, good, thank you. Honourable members, that brings us then to item 4 on our agenda, which is the consideration and adoption of the draft committee minutes of the 30th of November, the 3rd and the 7th of December 2021. These minutes have been circulated to members, but perhaps if Ms. Niekerk would be so kind to beam it onto our screens. Thank you. There you can see, particularly on page 1, the attendance. That is the 30th of November 1st. Thank you very much. That's page 2. Thank you. Page 3. Thank you. Honourable members, can we adopt those minutes? I think it was only myself and Honourable Maseku, if you scroll back, Ms. Niekerk, that attended that meeting. So Honourable Maseku.
Yes, I move that we adopt, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and I support that. Thank you. The next one is that of December the 3rd. Thank you. You see it there on your screen. Perhaps, Ms. Niekerk, if you could just say so. There were again myself, Honourable Maseku, and fortunately Honourable Maran in that meeting. And this was a meeting with the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. And it dealt with the
Chair.
Honourable Maran.
Thanks, Chair. Can you go back to the first page, please?
Yes.
Is my name?
Your name is there?
I was present. Yes, I was present.
Yes. Good. Would you like to propose that we also adopt this set of minutes?
Yes, Chair, I want to propose.
And
Good.
I second that, Chairperson.
Thank you. Beautiful. I appreciate that. Which brings us then to the minutes of the meeting of the 7th of December. Thank you, Ms. Niekerk. If you could scroll a little bit down.
Yes, Chairperson, just to note, there's 2 sets of minutes for the 7th of December. One meeting started at 3:15, which is the set of minutes, and then another one at 4:30 on the same day, all right?
Thank you. So first the 3:15 set, so please. Good. That was when we were dealing with the adjustments budget and the report that served before us, or the report that we actually drafted and then approved. Thank you. I see both Honourable Maseku, myself, and Honourable Honourable Maran were there.
I move that we adopt.
Thank you so much, Honourable Maseku. Honourable Maran, you are happy for us to accept that? Silence is taken as approval. Then the next one of concurrence. The next one is then also on the 7th of December, but the 16:30 meeting dealing, I think, with the Department of Agriculture's adjustment budget.
I move that we adopt, Chair. I had a look at it.
Good, thank you, Honourable Maseko. Everybody concur? Good, thank you very much. Duly served and adopted. Thank you, honourable members. We also need to consider our quarterly report for the 3 months, October, November and December 2021. This is the report on our activities as a committee for that period. And I'm grateful to that Honourable August. I think this will give you a nice overview of what we did over those 3 months. The report has been drafted, it has been proofread, and it is now in front of us for approval. Thank you. It's quite a lengthy report.
Chairperson, can I ask something?
Yes, Honourable Maseko.
On page 10 of the report for the invitation for those who went for the awards, do we claim for our transport or how does it work, Shireen?
Member, as far as I know, for invitations, because it was not an official committee oversight visit or anything like that, because there was no report produced for this visit. So if no report is produced, then we members generally cannot claim from the committee's budget. I'm not sure if it can be done from the enabling allowance. You would just have to check that with members' affairs.
No, it can be done on enabling. I just inquisitive to know that now. If we put it there, because it's on their report. So that is why I was asking, because I was wondering why is it included on the report, the purpose of the visit? Yes. Or, yeah.
Thank you.
I hope I answered your question and it makes sense.
No, you answered me. It was just a question of why the 13 is the Western Cape Prestige Agri Awards Gala ceremony, while invitation was sent on individuals, on us, didn't come to the committee itself for us to take a decision about it. That is why I was asking.
Okay.
In that fashion.
Good, thank you. So there's clarity on that. It is a part of our official business, but it won't come from the committee's budget. Good, thank you very much. Honourable members, can I have a proposal that report be adopted?
Yes, Chair, I move that we adopt.
Thank you very much, Honourable Maseko. No other views? Honourable Maran, you were part of that, of the committee's activities during that term. You're happy? Good, I take the silence then as that Honourable Maran also concur with that. Thank you very much then, Honourable members. Honourable members, that brings us to the last item, and that is general, in which I think Honourable members can give an indication as what aspects you would like to focus on in terms of our program going forward, and particularly our next meeting, which was to deal with the budget, but it seems to me as if the budget is going to serve slightly later before the provincial parliament than originally anticipated. So we've done quite good in terms of our tracking document. We've attended to many of those items. I think there are only 1 or 2 outstanding items, such as the envisaged visit to the Southern Cape to go and look at the biofuels project, whereby aliens are cleared and then converted into biofuels and so on. But are there any suggestions that members would like to raise? I was just thinking that, particularly with the reference to the climate smart agricultural practices, that we perhaps invite some of our academics in the Western Cape to also come and brief us on, say, for example, best farming practices to stretch the available water and to try and produce as much agricultural produce with a limited amount of water. You may recall that Dr. Trotsky also referred to say, you know, it's not a lack of soils, it's actually a lack of water that is the biggest restrictive factor in the Western Cape. So my proposal would be that we perhaps invite some experts on the field of water consumption in agriculture and ways to maximize the use of that water, and perhaps the advances that have already been made in this regard. But are there any other aspects that members that would interest members?
Yes, Chair.
Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think we have been engaging with the top level of the agricultural fields. So I wish to have a buy-in that we engage with the small-scale farmers. If we can have, for an example, say we are going to the site of the Garden Road district, and we get different small-scale farmers to come and engage with us to hear what are the challenges or what are the achievements as small-scale farmers, and if we can be that we have to add value with our resolution, what is it that they feel we can do to something like that. If we can do that, going from a district to a district, maybe over back then Garden Road going, so we get the feeling, you know, we have the empathy to them with the challenges of the drought and any other thing that we hear, what is it that is they are going through for them to try to be successful, so that we can get that info directly from them and not from their department only. I will appreciate, maybe, I hope I get the buy-in from the members that we can have a roadshow to that effect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Maseko. I'm quite excited about your proposal. I think it's necessary for us to get a briefing on the small-scale farming practices and whether there's a future for them and what is needed for them to be successful, etc. So thank you very much. I believe that has been noted by Ms. Nikak. The next hand is that of Honourable Marais and then Honourable August.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I think this year we've got to give much more attention to organic waste, because there's a growing market for this. And I think the United Nations, I read, has selected Tunisia for a world conference on organic marketing, organic waste rather, and what role this is going to play in future. So the World Congress will take place in 2024. I think we've got to sort of let our minds go and say, what role can we play? The poor communities, they are asked to collect organic waste, but the type of food they eat is not the food that scientists say is good. For organic waste, they're very selective what they're going to use. So we've got to give attention to this. Our people don't have money for lettuce and all those fancy stuff. The poor people don't have it. I want to know, why can't we use the type of vegetables and food that the poor use? They're just organic, but they say, I read it up, it's not suitable. So I think we've got to give much more attention to that. And give another example, cut grass. People cut their grass, and even the city of Cape Town, they cut grass here by us and in Constantia and all over, where there's lawns and grass. And what happens to that? Because remember, they're going to ban organics to be used as landfill. So we need to give a incentive to private waste collectors. What to do with their organic waste in this grass can be quite useful. And I think we need to invite people to address us on the whole issue of collecting organic waste. And we're going to get much more involved in 2024 in this aspect, organic waste and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Marais. I believe that is noted. It might even involve the Department of Environmental Affairs, because I do know that they are quite interested in obviously landfill and waste collection and the sustainability of such sites, etc. So I think that's an excellent proposal, and let's see, you know, where we can get the necessary expertise to brief us on that one. Then over to you, Honourable August.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. I would like to support what Honourable Masego has said with regards to small scale farmers, to have a visit to those specific farms. But I would like to add by asking if, and I'm new to this portfolio, so please bear with me. If there's any practices in terms of black emerging farmers or small scale farmers with bigger farms where they share best practices, where they have some partnership, where they support one another, or if there is any supporting system, I would like to also, if possible, if we could look into that, if there is something like that within the agricultural system, and if we are able to visit that or engage on that platform as well, to see how we can support and even further and strengthen the relationship between those different scale of farming. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Thank you, Honourable August. And thank you for that support also of Honourable Maseko's proposal. And can I ask that we perhaps include under this also urban farming, which I think by definition is normally small scale farming, and that because I do know that some cities have policies on urban farming, etc. And it might be interesting to get their views as well on what is feasible and what is deemed to be problematic from an urban farming point of view. Good, honourable members, thank you very much. Can I extend an open invitation to members? If you do have other topics that you would like us to cover, to submit such to Ms. Shireen Niekerk, who will pass it on to me, and we can then take this to future meetings of this committee to be added to our upcoming agendas and program for this year. Honourable members, that then brings us to our last item, which is then the closing of this meeting. Before I close, can I just ask if there are any other inputs that anybody would like to make in this regard? Not, I would like.
There is one.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Maseko.
Chair, when we started the meeting, I was not in the meeting, so I just want to welcome Honourable Member August in the committee and looking forward to work harmoniously and to learn some of the things that he will bring in within the committee. So big ups and looking forward to the main team of the Standing Committee of Agriculture. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Maseko. Indeed, we did welcome him, and I believe he will always be making good contributions, and that pun is intended. Thank you very much, honourable members. With that, I want to say thank you very much for your active participation in this meeting. It's always heartwarming. Also, thank you to those that were standing in, such as Honourable America, and I wish you a very pleasant rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.